In the 80s and 90s, Nissan were busy making some of the most legendary performance cars the world has ever seen. GTRs, Pulsars, S-chassis and 300Zs. We all know and love these cars. But what if I told you that there was a turbocharged SR20 powered Nissan with all-wheel drive and even rally DNA? A Nissan that you probably didn't even know existed. An understated hero that fell victim to Nissan's own success, overshadowed by its Gran Turismo cover-worthy brothers, lost to history. This is the story of the Bluebird Atessa. To understand why the Bluebird Atessa exists, we need to understand the late 80s arms race in Japan. Rally and Glory was the name of the game. Mitsubishi had the Galant VR4, Subaru was working on the Legacy RS, Toyota had the Celica GT4, and Nissan? They had a plan. It was called Atessa, Advanced Total Traction Engineering System for all terrain. A name only the Japanese could come up with, but a system that worked, and shockingly well. While the R32 Skyline GTR would become the poster child for Atessa all-wheel drive, the Bluebird was the first to get it. Launching in 1987 as part of the U12 generation, Nissan was playing a quiet but strategic game. They wanted real-world data, and what better way to do so than with a test mule sold to the masses. The performance version of the U12 featured a 1.8-litre CA18 DET engine, a double overhead cam, turbocharged inline-4 producing around 170 horsepower. Power was sent to all four wheels via a 5-speed manual and the original Atessa system, which used a mechanical centre differential and viscous coupling to split torque between the axles. This was an earlier iteration of the Atessa system, which didn't feature ETS. Torque split was typically 50-50, but could adapt slightly depending on conditions, with the rear often doing more work under spirited driving. In day-to-day use, it was a subtle, competent sedan, but show it a wet back road and it transformed. That's what made it so compelling. It had all the ingredients of a future cult classic. It just didn't quite look the part. But there was a version that did, sort of. I present to you what I think, perhaps controversially, is one of the coolest OEM versions of a relatively everyday car, built to order in very limited numbers. This is the SSR. The SSR wasn't officially a Group A homologation car, but was built with rallying in mind, and that intent is baked into every single bolt. It retained the CA18 DET and the all-wheel drive system, but offered a host of changes over the standard car. Stiffer suspension, reinforced subframes, weight reduction through deleted features, which consisted of no rear wiper and reduced sound insulation, and rally-oriented gearing. Some even came with provisions for skid plates, rally lighting, and underbody protection. In Japan, the SSR was a low-volume special, but it wasn't just a factory shelf queen. It was developed in tandem with Nissan's motorsport department, often competing in snow or gravel events where its all-wheel drive and balance made it a competitive outsider. The CA18 DET was known for its tunability, though it did lack the firepower of rival engines like the 4G63T. Still, the Bluebird scored several respectable results in Japanese rally championships, even making the odd appearance in European ones, including the Swedish Rally. In terms of popularity, its greatest rival was the GTR. Nissan had already pivoted towards making the Skyline their primary focus for international motorsports. The Bluebird, while capable, was never going to get the same love or budget. Interestingly, the R32 GTR and the Bluebird were estimated to have been made in very similar numbers, but the Bluebird SSS has since become significantly rarer. Not that the R32 GTRs are common cars either. Oh, and if you're wondering about the export version, yes, the Bluebird was rebadged as the Nissan Stanza in markets like North America. In some markets, they did receive versions of the CA18 engine, even in turbocharged form, but these lacked the Atessa all-wheel drive system and weren't quite as focused on performance. So while the Stanza shared a name and some parts, it didn't share the spirit, so I will be leaving that out of the video. Sorry to the Stanza owners. Back to the Bluebird. In 1991, the U13 generation arrived, and with it, the evolution of the Bluebird Atessa formula. Gone was the CA18 DET, and in came the legendary SR20 DET, a 2-litre turbo inline-4 pushing over 210 horsepower. More power, more torque, and a more refined package overall. The SSS Limited Atessa remained the flagship trim, complete with all-wheel drive, a 5-speed manual, and all the makings of a sleeper sedan. But something was lost. The U13 was heavier, more insulated, and less raw. It had grown up, more of a legacy than a legend. That said, it still offered legitimate performance, and the SR20 DET has become iconic in tuner circles for a reason. While the U13 was never rallied to the same degree as the U12, it solidified the Bluebird status as a platform capable of housing serious performance. Today, the Bluebird Atessa sits in a strange place, somewhere between obscurity and cult status. Most were sold domestically in Japan, with a few making it to Australia and New Zealand. Virtually none were exported to the US or Europe, outside of motorsport use anyway. And as a result, most enthusiasts, even Japanese car fans, have never even heard of it. But make no mistake, this car matters. It was all part of Nissan's broader push into turbo all-wheel drive platforms. It shared tech with the Pulsar GTR, the Silvia, and even early learnings that would go into the R32 GTR's success. It may not have had a huge motorsport trophy case, but it did have the heart and the heritage. It's a reminder that even in the world of beige four-doors, Nissan was never afraid to experiment. The Nissan Bluebird Atessa might not be the first name that comes up in conversations about Japanese icons, but it was there, a testbed for one of the greats, and for those who knew what it can do, a secret weapon.